All right, so in this week's lesson, we're going to be talking about triads. And I wanted to create a lesson that I wished I had had when I was younger and just getting started with improvising. This is kind of like, when I started with triads and understanding what they were, I didn't really know how to use them. I didn't really know how to find them. I didn't understand their importance. And I wish somebody had just sort of given me the Cliff Notes version of triads and how to start using them, like the essential stuff. And so that's what we're going to be going through in this video. We're going to be talking about the essential stuff. We're going to be making really cool little song, and by the end of this, and putting it all together in a very comprehensive way. So in this video, we're going to go through all of the lesson material. If you'd like to get the extra material, which come with this lesson, there's quite a bit. There's PDF handout. There's an MP3 jam track. We're going to I'll tab out the little song that I play at the end of this. And then there's also a little practice drill. You can get all of those extra things by going to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page and do a search for EP485. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to break the fretboard up into 3 different regions. That's going to make this easier. Now, when I talk about the caged system quite a bit, caged is C-A-G-E-D. There's 5, so there's actually 5 different regions of the fretboard if we use caged, but we're only going to be using 3 of those 5. These are like the main 3. And honestly, if, back to the cage thing, just the E and the A shape, those are the most important ones. Those are the most used, I would say. So if you were just kind of getting into cage and you're wanting to know which ones to focus on, the E and the A shape are the big ones. But anyway, in this, we're going to be looking at the E, the C, and the A shape. And we're going to be playing in the key of G. And the first thing I should say before we get into this is, what the heck is a triad? Well, triad obviously indicates 3. It's just a 3-note chord. It's a chord with 3 notes in it. And it's a major, we're going to be looking at a major chord, major triad. And a major triad, or major chord, comes from the major scale. So we're going to be playing in the key of G. So all I would be doing is I'd be taking the major scale, the G major scale, which is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. You know that one by ear. If I were to take the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th note out of that scale and play them together in unison, I'd be playing a G major chord. That's all a major chord is. So when I play them together, and those notes are G, B, and D, I'm playing a G chord. Now, I used to be confused when I first learned that, because I would say, okay, cool. So a major chord is just the 1, the 3, and the 5 out of the major scale. But when I would play a major chord, like a G major chord, like this or like this, I'm playing 6 notes. I'm playing 6 strings. So I'd be confused. Like, I thought it was only 3. Well, if you look at what's going on there with those 6 notes, I'm actually still only playing 3 notes. Some of them are just repeated. So when I'm playing this note, that's my G, that's my D, and that's my B. But then the next note is another G. And then down here is another G. So there's 3 Gs. 1, 2, 3. They're an octave apart, but still 3 Gs. And then there's 2 Ds. And then there's 1 B. So it's still G, B, and D, even though I'm playing 6 strings. So the truth is, you could play 20 Gs and 14 Ds and 1 B, and that's still a G chord. It doesn't matter how many of those extra notes you stack, as long as it's those notes, the G, the B, and the D, then it's a major chord. The reason why we play these, 6-string chords or 5-string chords is they're just fuller sounding. They give you a little more volume and a little more, to work with. So anyway, that's what a triad is. We're going to start off in the E shape, so we're going to be playing our G chord here. Now, how do I know that's a G chord in the E shape? Now, here's my little formula. So I'm going to kind of go through that for each of these 3 shapes. If we're playing out of the E shape, it's the note on our 1st string. What I mean by that is, I'm going to find the G note on the 1st string, and that's going to tell me where to play this triad. That also tell me where to bar if I was playing using the E shape, the full bar chord. But we're going to take this bar chord and we're going to break it into 2 triads. Now we're only going to be looking at strings 4, 3, 2, and 1. We're going to eliminate the 5th and 6th strings. And the reason for that isn't because that you don't play triads there. You can play triads using all 6 strings, but it just becomes too much. And I've got a little formula. We're getting at just the heart of what we need to learn in order to be able to use these. And you'll see why as we kind of get into this. Adding more variables just becomes too much. It's overwhelmed. So if we take this chord and we look at the top 3 strings, that's G, D, and B. If we look at this, That's those same three notes, just in a different order. So now we have D, B, and G. So we have a triad here and a triad here. And they're on top of each other like that. So I think of this one, we'll think of that one as our upper triad. We'll just use that as a way to describe it. And this is our lower triad. So within our E shape, our E neighborhood, we've got an upper triad and a lower triad. Now there's another one down here and so forth, but we're not going to worry about that. We're just looking at these top two, upper and lower. Okay, and remember we use the first string as the note that tell us how to get into that neighborhood. Now if we're going to be playing in the C shape, we're going to use the note from our second string. So now we're going to find a G note on our second string. Same note. And that tells me how to find this C chord shape. And so what I do then, and remember we're only playing the top four strings, is I'll split this into two triads as well. So we've got this triad, which looks like a little triangle, and where my ring finger is, the tip of that triangle, that's our G note. And then we've got this shape. And where my middle finger is, same note, that's my G. So we've got our same three notes, G, B, and D. We've just got them in two different spots. So now we have four G triads. We have 1, 2, and we have 3, 4. We're going to find two more, and we're going to be up here now in the A shape. And the note, the string that we're going to be using as our reference string to find the note name to tell us where we are for this chord shape is going to be on the third string. So remember, for the E chord shape, it was the note from our first string. For our C chord shape, it was the note on our second string. And then up here, it's the note on our third string. So 12th fret third string, that's our G note. And that's going to help me find my two triads. So we got this one, which is the top part of our A shape. And then we have this one, which is kind of the lower half. It's really more like the middle of the A shape. But it's another triad there. So you have triad here and a triad here. And that's just the 12th fret, strings 2, 3, and 4. So now look at this. We have 6 triads. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we could keep going. I could come back. You know, everything repeats after the 12th fret. So the 12th fret is the equivalence of the nut. The 1st fret and the 13th fret are together. They're just an octave apart, but you see what I mean. So it starts to repeat. So now we're going to take that same formula and apply it to a different chord. We're going to try playing a C chord now. And you'll see why I chose C as the chord in a minute. But we're going to find our C chord in 6 different triads all over the fretboard. So we're going to use do it the same way we did for the G. So we're going to start off by finding the C chord using the E shape. And you should be able to pause the video and work that out yourself and find that upper and lower. But I'll assume you've tried that. And what you do is you remember you go to the first string. So we're going to find our C note on the first string. That's up here on the 8th fret. So that means there's your upper triad, there's your lower triad, there's your C and a C. Now we're going to move on. The next one, remember everything moves and everything stays in the same order. So let's move on up to the next one, which would be our C shape. So it's the same thing as our C shape here, but we're playing it a full octave higher. So you've got the 2 triads here. You've got one here and one here. And remember, it's the note name on our second string that tells us that. That's our C note. Therefore, we know that triad and that triad both contain that note. Okay, and then for the third one, we could keep going up, but why not just use the old reset and come down here and find play our C chord using the A shape down here. So we've got the top part of the A shape, and then we've got this triad below, so upper and lower. So now we have 6 C triads using that same formula. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so now let's have a little fun with this. We have our G triad in 6 spots. We have our C triad in 6 spots. It's like our 1 chord and our 4 chord. We should be able to now work out the 5 chord, which would be our D. And now we've got a 1, 4, 5, and we have 6 different options of each to choose from. So for our D chord, it's everything that we did for the C, but you just move it up 2 frets. So if this was our C chord using the E shape, you would come up here. There's your D note, right? So you have your upper and your lower. And then let's come down here to the D chord that we all know, right? And play this one. It's the same thing as if we were playing it up here, right? Hopefully you can start to see this relationship, upper, lower. and then we'll play it here, upper, lower, using the A shape. So we did the E shape, the C shape, because see, there's my C chord shape. Even though we're in that D region, you can see the C shape there. And then we've got our A shape, upper and lower. All right, so now let's take those three chords and let's play them together in the same area. So our 1, 4, 5 here, and our 1, 4, 5 here, and our 1, 4, 5 here. It's a really good way to practice these and see the relationships between them. You'll see what I mean as we get into it. So let me just demonstrate. So what we're going to do is we're going to play our G, and we're going to start off on the top 3 strings. We're going to do that layer, and then we'll do strings 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to do this. So what I did was G, C, and D. So there's the G, the top part of the E shape, top part of the A shape, top part of the A shape, and then we come up to the C shape. And we're going to keep going. Now we're going to do a G up here. We're going to do the same little cadence. Top part of the E shape for the C, for the D, and then back to our G. We'll keep going. C. There's our D, and then we conclude with it up here. Now that's a really good practice exercise. This is what it sounds like with the jam track, just to give you a little sample. And remember, as a premium member, you would have access to that jam track, and it's just kind of a fun way to practice. And also the tablature. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing, but on strings 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to start with our G chord here, and we're going to play. There's our C. There's our D. And then here's our G again up here using the C shape. Now we're going to repeat starting here. There's E shape for the D, up to our A shape for the G. Keep going. So you start running out of space there, but you can see we've done the top 3 strings, and we've done strings 2, 3, and 4. All right, so now we're going to kick things up a notch, and we're going to mix the lower and the upper triads. So we're going to start with the lower triad, the G, and then we're going to go to the upper C in the same area, right? Like this. And then we're going to go to the lower for the D, and then the upper for the G. So let me do that again. We have lower for the G, upper for the C, lower for the D, upper for the G. And let's keep going. Now this time we're going to start with the upper, and we're going to alternate. We're going to go upper, lower, upper, lower. So we have upper, lower, upper, lower. Let's do one more. We'll start here, and we're going to start on the lower, and we're going to go lower, upper, lower, upper. So we have lower, upper, lower, upper. And that's a really good way for you to see the relationship between your 1, 4, and 5. And obviously we're doing this in the key of G, but you could play this in any key. All right, so now we're going to take a look at some extensions we can add to these major chords and make them sound a little more interesting. We're going to play a 6 chord and a 9 chord and a 7 chord and just give us more variation. We're only going to be talking about major chords in this video. We'll do a separate one, a follow-up on minor triads if there's an interest. So actually leave a comment and let me know if you have an interest in that. But here's what I'm talking about. So let's go back to our starting point, which was this G chord up here and from the E shape. If I take my pinky, notice when I'm playing, this is another reason I like doing these triads, because I have extra fingers to play other fretted notes. So if I'm playing that and I add the 5th fret 2nd string, which is an E note to that, then what I'm doing is I'm converting this G major triad to a G6. Now I realize that's not a proper G6. A proper G6 would have 4 notes, right? It would be more like that. But the truth is, you can take any of those 4 notes and play them in unison, and you're still playing a version of a G6. This would work just fine over a jam track that had a G in it. Or if I was playing along with a band and everyone else is playing a G chord, if I play this on top of it, I'd be playing a G6. It would sound like a G6. So we have our G chord, we have our G6. I slide that pinky up 1 fret, and now I'm playing a G7 or G dominant 7. So I have all these options just by adding this one little string here to my triad. The other thing I want to mention is from your 6 chord, and I've talked about this quite a bit, you can always play the 9 version of that chord by just sliding it down 2 frets. So whatever your 6 chord is, anywhere on the fretboard, if you take your 6 chord and go down 2 frets, you're now playing a 9, so that would be a G9. So we have a G9, a G6, and a G7. All from that basic triad. You can see I'm still holding down that triad. I'm just adding that little extension to that. The same is true, that's for the upper, the same is true for the lower. There's my G, there's my G6, same note, I'm just adding the same note, adding it here as well. And if that's a G6, that's a G9. Okay, so that's the note we add there, is right there on that 2nd string, 5th fret to the 6th fret. For the E shape. Let's talk about now how we would add some extensions to our C shape up here. So if I'm playing my G chord up here using this shape, I can add my pinky to the 9th fret 3rd string and get the 6th chord and then slide that up 1 fret, just like we did down here, and that's my 7 chord. So now I've got a G7, a G6, slide that down 2 frets for a G9. And so I have those options. The same is true. So that's for the upper triad. The same is true for the lower triad. Same note. So you have these options. Now it doesn't sound like much yet, but it will. You have to just bear with me. Let's move up to the A shape, and we have 2 places we can do it out of the A shape. We can do it on the 1st string. So there's the top part of our A shape. I can do it here, 12th fret 1st string, 13th fret 1st string. And you can see when I'm doing this, that's just a bar there. So if I were to play that G6 using this, I'd just bar it like this. And remember, a G9 is just 2 frets this way, however you're making it. So that would be a G9 using in this position, in this chord shape. So that's the upper, and then for the lower triad, you have it down here. It'll be on the 4th string. So you come up to the 14th fret, up to the 15th fret. That's your 6, that's your 9. So now in summary, I can play a major triad in 6 different spots on the neck. I can play a 6 chord triad, I can play a dominant 7 chord triad, and I can play a 9 chord triad in 6 different spots all over the neck. All right, so now let's have some fun with this. Let me just improvise. I don't have anything planned. I'm just going to take these chord shapes and I'm going to start playing a real simple little blues here using nothing but those chord shapes, just to show you what some of your possibilities are. So. I'm going to explain this here in a minute. So I wasn't playing any scales there. I was just taking those chord shapes, those triads, and I was making harmonies and little simple melodies out of those. That's another nice thing about this. You don't have to even think scales. You can just think about chord shapes. Now, what if we were to introduce the minor pentatonic scale to this? This is where it gets really interesting. So we take these same little chord shapes and we start playing minor pentatonic scale along with it. Let me do some of that, and I'll stop and I'll explain what I'm doing as I do it. So we'll start off, I'll kind of start off in the same vibe. Now what I'm doing there, taking that triad, and I'm starting by playing strings 1 and 2. Here's the other thing that it took me years to realize. You can take those triads and split them out. You don't have to play all 3 strings every time. Just play strings 1 and 2 out of that, or 2 and 3. And when I came up here, I was thinking about that triad, right? Out of the C shape, Just strings 1 and 2 though. Big light bulb goes off out there for a lot of you. You realize, oh, I can just harmonize. So what I'm doing there, I came up to the A shape, just strings 1 and 2 though, right? I'm playing harmonies out of these triads. You can start to hear it. And then when you throw in the 7, just 2 strings, it starts to sound really cool, like you're really able to improvise and say a lot with a little. Now, if we introduce the minor pentatonic scale to that, you get a whole different level. Now, I'm thinking about the minor pentatonic scale, pattern 1, and it happens to fit perfectly inside this E container. Now, we're playing the G minor pentatonic scale, and we're playing G chords, but it's in that E container. Hopefully you see what I mean. Now watch this. You can see I threw in a little minor pentatonic. Now we'll go back to the chord shapes. I came up here to our C shape. There's our 7 that I showed you before, right? Now watch this. I went to my C chord using the E shape. It's just right here. Right? There's my 7. I just bent into it as opposed to hitting it precisely. You can bend into those notes as well. And then back down. Throwing a little minor pentatonic there. I can go into pattern 2 as well. I can go in any of my patterns. I just try and stay into the same region that I'm in. So then the D chord, and then to our C chord, 6 to the 9, right? There's C chord using the A shape, and then we go back to our G. There's our D, and now I can do the same thing up here an octave higher. There's my triad. I'm just playing the triad, right? Six to my 9. You see it? Now we're going to the 4 chord, which is our C. C7. And then there's my pentatonic scale, pattern 4. There's my G, my D chord, my 5 chord, using the E shape. Back to my C. And then back to my 1. So I'm playing a pretty awesome sounding blues, improvising, and I could do this all day long just using those shapes that I showed you. So this is why, instead of me saying, well, let's go through every single possibility there is for playing a triad, it's overwhelmed. It would lose you. I'd lose myself trying to do that as well. So just focus on that. Go through that little practice drill to get the relationship and start to get that stuck in your head so that when you're in this neighborhood, you know how to get to your 1-4-5 in this neighborhood. And when you're in this one, your A neighborhood, you know how to get to your 1-4-5 there. This is all done over the key of G, but you can do this in any key. Now, as I mentioned, for premium members, I do have a little song like I was just improvising there, but it's completed and tabbed out. So you have that that you can go through, and you can learn it note for note if you would rather learn it that way. But the meat of this and the instruction in this is really in this video is just understanding how it all fits together. So you do have all those extras, though. There's the PDF, and then there's the tablature and the MP3 jam track, and all those extra things you can practice with. So I would encourage you to check out Premium Membership if you haven't. I have over 10 years worth of in-depth lessons like this, and they're all designed to help you improvise. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button so we can stay in touch, and you'll know when I put out new lessons. All right, we'll see you in the next video.